You are listening to I Am Refocused Radio with your host, Shamaya Reed. This show is designed to inspire you to live your purpose and regain your focus. And now, here's your host, Shamaya Reed.
Hey, welcome to I Am Refocused Radio. We are here once again, and today, just like any other day, we have another amazing special guest. Today, we're going to be talking to Jim Fuller, and if you want to learn about his amazing work, go visit his website, jimfuller.com. He's not just a coach, a facilitator, and speaker and author. He's an amazing person that we're going to get to know today. And first and foremost, I just want to say welcome to the show. And how you doing, Jim?
Yeah, really well. Thanks, Shamaya. Thanks for having me on.
And I checked out your awesome TED Talk, and it was not just inspirational, but I like the fact that you're able to break things down into its simplest form. And what I took away from that TED Talk was to listen and then respond. And you had so many great points throughout your TED Talk about having an open mind and also telling the young generation, the next generation, a better way to communicate with people who may be different than they are, and having ability to learn from other people's points of views. So first and foremost, man, tell the audience a little bit about yourself, and then we'll dive into this topic of listen and respond.
Yeah, sure, man. Happy partner and father. We're a blended family. We've got 4 teenagers between the two of us. We live on the surf coast in Australia, lots of waves and beautiful nature. So as well as being an exec coach, I've been running retreats in the remote Himalayan mountains of India, in the jungles of Bali, and in some beautiful remote spots here in Australia since 2014. COVID kind of put a bit of a pause to the international stuff, but we're back up and running again this year, which is nice. I'm just really on a mission to help to share the practices and the perspectives that have become habitual for me that just create more ease, more flow, more success, and anyone that's open to hearing about it, I've got all the time in the world for.
And you, as a professional, you work with all kinds of people from different backgrounds and different locations. Is there a common thread? Because in the TED Talk video, I like the illustration you pointed out where you was talking about we bleed the same blood, the color of the blood. We may look different on the outside, but there's some similarities there when it comes to how we deal with people from different places who may be different from us.
Yeah, man. Look, and that comes back to your first point around listening. The biggest problems, we got to solve them together, and I really believe that the solutions will come from the harnessing of diversity. We need different perspectives. We need different cultural backgrounds. We need different ideas. If we're selecting solutions from a very narrow bandwidth, if you're only talking to people like you, and together you're trying to come up with a solution, it's very restricted. But if we can open the bandwidth, if we can communicate with people who have very different ideas to us, very different ways of life, if we can communicate effectively and open our minds to these different points of view, then that's harnessing diversity. That's when we can really create global solutions. So I think it's super important, and especially at the moment, the world's biggest problems, like I say in the TED Talk, pandemics and inequality and global warming, these things don't discriminate. They don't care where you grew up. We all get affected by this. So I think more now than ever before, it's important that we refocus on listening to each other and coming together.
And when it comes to communication, that is something that we all can work on. And it's always the mindset of having a work in progress. It's not like we're all masters immediately and we're just perfect and it's everyone else's fault. Because are there patterns where you notice where people who are asking you for help with their coaching, that there's a similar pattern where you find an individual who may play the blame game where it's always someone else that did this to me, or it's because of them that I'm not where I want to be? Do you ever notice those patterns, and do they exist a lot in different clients that you work with?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think the common thread for all of us is ego. And ego is quite simply our sense of identity. And we have to have a sense of identity, apparently, because we've all got one, right? So it's a function of being human, is that we have this sense of self and our place in the bigger picture. Where we trip up on that, and I don't just mean some people, I mean all of us, where we trip up on that is that we get very defensive about our sense of identity. And that includes our ideology. It includes our political viewpoint. It includes, anything that we identify with. And I think the ongoing practice, and like you said, you never become a master of it. It's like, I don't know, if you have a practice of, say, you exercise a few times a week, you don't kind of get good at it and then stop and go, right, I've ticked that box, I don't need to exercise anymore. Or yoga or Pilates or meditation, it becomes a way of life. So this continual awareness of self, and being conscious of when you are, defending a point of view, maybe perhaps too strongly in a conversation, and just putting that to the side a little bit and saying to yourself, hang on, I'm really going to seek to understand here. I know my point of view, and I'll get to that if I need to. If I feel like the conversation will benefit from my point of view, I'll get there. But just for a moment, let me pause. Let me put my sense of identity to the side for a second, and let me really, really seek to understand this person who's sharing, their story with me.
Yeah, I like on your website, under the communication section, it says communication is so much more than just the exchange of information. It is the bridge between isolation and connection. That alone speaks volumes, because that's very true. You have two individuals in discussion, and one person is claiming this and the other person is claiming that. But how do we create that bridge that allows each person's perspective be heard in a healthy way?
Man, I think we really have got to come to the stuff we have in common first. It's easy to talk about our differences. There's plenty of them. Let's start the conversation with what we have in common, And that was the story in the TED Talk. This young man that I met in Pakistan back in the 90s. And he was the one we were talking. He's a devout Muslim, and and I'm not religious, but I come from a Christian background. And we were having this beautiful conversation. And he said, "We're the same, man." He said, "If I cut your skin here and we cut my skin here, we have the same colored blood." And that analogy for me meant so much more. If you have children, you care about them, right? If you lose a loved one, you grieve too, like I do. You need food and water. So do I. You need shelter. So do I, and so let's start the conversation with what we've got in common. I think people who have an aversion or a prejudice against another group of people, quite often they've never actually met someone from that group. They have an aversion to this specific group of people, but they've never actually sat down and broken bread with any of them. So I think we need to start with what we've got in common.
Once again, listen to I Am Refocused Radio, and we're talking to Jim Fuller. You can go to his website, jimfuller.com. And we have to start somewhere. So it's one thing, we say a lot on the show, it's one thing to notice something that we can refocus on, work on, get better at. There's a process that we have to follow. What's some of the steps that you start with your clients when you're coaching them, as far as finding out where they are, being realistic, and then planning on taking those action steps moving forward?
I think the first step in the process of developing more conscious communication is with yourself, really to start a practice of radical self-acceptance. When you come to a place of true self-love and self-acceptance, then there's less noise in the way of you and the people around you. When you're not resolved with yourself, if you've still got perceived issues with yourself, then that creates noise in between you and truly being able to understand anybody else. Because when anyone says anything to you, you're running it through your filtering system of your beliefs and your biases, which is to do with your past. So the first step with my clients is, let's put into practice some ways to smooth out that relationship with yourself, to accept that you are exactly who you should be in this moment right now. that you are completely enough of everything that you need to be you. You shouldn't be more like anyone else, because you're not. You should just be you. And so we talk about some practices around self-love. I think that when you come to a place of true self-love and acceptance, then you can make it less about you. Then you can serve more effectively. Then you can contribute to the greater good more effectively.
And that service, serve is a key word. And it makes me think about the word that's on your website, and that's leadership. Leadership is an action, though. Leadership is not a happy thought. It's not just a positive mindset. It's actually going outside your comfort zone and taking that new action that you probably haven't taken in a while. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That you're so right, because leadership involves others, right? I mean, there's self-leadership as well, and that's important. But if, most humans I come across are driven in some way to have some sort of positive impact on the world around them. And some people, it's not about saving the world. It's just about having a positive impact on their partner or their children or their local community. For some people, they want to have a bigger impact, more broadly in the city that they live in. And some people want to change the world. It doesn't matter the scope, the desire behind the want to contribute is there. And that means getting out of your comfort zone. And that means leadership, right? That means, you can have all the happy thoughts in the world, but if you're just sitting at home watching Netflix, then that's not really doing much, So yeah, you got to get out of your comfort zone and go out there and do whatever you can to make a positive difference.
And speaking of making a positive difference, you also have books, and there's a book, The Art of Conscious Communication for Thoughtful Men, a way to fulfilling your potential. When people are trying to better themselves, it's because they don't like where they are currently. I can't speak for everyone, but I think a lot of cases it's because they want to improve. They want something of quality that is missing right now currently in their life. And when someone's listening to this right now, talk a little bit about that book that you wrote that I just mentioned, and how it's important for people to find out what their potential is, because a lot of times we fail ourselves by not believing in our potential. So we just get used to lack and we just settle versus stretching ourselves to becoming the best we can be.
Yeah, absolutely. And, there's a fine point in here, Shemaiah, about, when I spoke before about radical self-acceptance and completely accepting that I'm exactly who I should be in this moment right now, that's talking about a snapshot in this moment. That's not talking about the future. That doesn't mean that I don't want to improve and continue to expand into my potential. The snapshot of me right now is somebody who does have a desire to continue to expand into my potential. So I just wanted to make that little point. Acceptance doesn't mean apathy. Acceptance doesn't mean approval. I can accept that the world is the way it is right now. Do I approve of what's going on? No, not everything, not at all. But I do accept that it is what it is right now, if that makes any sense. But coming back to that communication piece, for me, my experience, I've coached, thousands and thousands of hours. And one of the common themes that comes up for people in terms of tripping them over and preventing them from moving into their potential is communication, or the lack of, or miscommunication. So there are, in a relationship with your loved one, you both love each other, but quite often the arguments or the unrest comes from a miscommunication. In the workplace as well, you can have two teams. You have the sales team and you have the compliance team. They work for the same organization. They want the same outcome, but they're missing each other in the communication. And so communication is really so important. And I believe there's a big area of possibility and potential for us to continue to evolve in the way that we communicate. You look at what's going now digitally online. You've got these different groups of people that have identified with different causes and reasons, and they're just shouting at each other. They're not actually evolving the situation. They're just literally shouting across these digital divides of difference. And I don't believe it's helping the situation. I think we need to come better into communication around how can we actually create some resolution? How can we actually move forward in an evolutionary way, rather than a destructive way?
Just now tuned in, we've been listening to I Am Refocused Radio, talking to our special guest today, Jim Fuller. Go to his website, jimfuller.com. And we've been talking about communication and also identity and connection. But what about purpose? What about that why? Because we hear that a lot. Find out your why, find out the meaning of what drives your passion. So because when you have that right passion in the right place, you can be effective.
Yeah, look, you don't have to have a reason why. If you don't want to, you don't have to. I don't think you have to have it, but I certainly know it helps with resilience. If you have a strong purpose, because humans need a reason why. This is our motivation. This gives us the fuel in the tank. On the tough days when we're facing adversity and challenge, if you have a strong enough reason why, you'll find the strength to go through with it. Imagine we're standing outside a burning house, and I said to you, in the third bedroom on the right is a $20 note. You'd be like, yeah, whatever, Jem, I'm not going into the burning house. But if we were standing outside the same burning house and I said to you, in the third bedroom on the right is one of your children, boom, you're running straight into that house. Same burning house, different reason why. Yeah, so we need a strong reason why to get through the tough times. With this purpose, this what is my purpose, some people get stuck in the idea that I have to find it, that it's out there somewhere and I'm going to hear it, like in a voice from God. I like to just, put a little change on the wording of it. Rather than finding your purpose, you get to make it up. You get to create it. You can come up with your own purpose, something that's meaningful to you, something you're passionate about, something where you can use your natural gifts, your natural talents to make a difference. You can make it up. Nobody comes and knocks on your front door and says, I'm sorry, that's the wrong purpose. It's yours. So rather than, thinking that it's out there somewhere and you got to find it, just spend some time in contemplation and choose something that you care about and put yourself to that,
And with that caring, because that plays a role in how you serve your community and how you serve for the bigger picture. How important is it to get involved with your community where you are versus just going aimlessly anywhere?
Yeah, because that speaks to connection and socialization. And this is one of the deepest drives in us as humans. We need each other. As independent as you want to be, we need each other. The only reason we survived as a species off the savannah plains was because we figured out how to socialize. We figured out how to work together as teams. You think about, you and me sitting here now on a radio show. There's not one single person that could have dreamt up this show, built the studio, laid the bricks and mortar, put all the tech stuff in, run the whole thing, did all the digital, and then sit here as you are with me now hosting a show. We need all of us to come together to make anything happen. So there's a lot of power in that. There's a lot of power in community. And I think we're naturally drawn towards that. And that loops back to what we were talking before about communication is the bridge between isolation and connection. And isolation is not a good thing for us humans. I mean, apart from the occasional person who sits in a cave and meditates forever, but that's a different story. Generally speaking, as humans, we need each other. We need to connect. And people who are isolated have shorter lifespans. They're more prone to disease and mental struggles. So yeah, if you've got an idea, and with the world the way it is now, with the World Wide Web, is actually, there's so many benefits to that. You can jump online. You've got an idea, just say you want to help the stray dogs in your local community because you've noticed a lot of stray dogs and you feel for them and you want to help them. You jump online and find other people who care about that too, and you come together as a group. You're going to be way more effective in helping those dogs than doing it on your own,
Once again, talking to Jim Fuller. Go to his website, jimfuller.com. Coach, facilitator, speaker, author, and I want to say someone that's easy to talk to, because you're living up to what you are showing to everyone through your TED Talks and through this discussion right now, and that is listen and respond. And before time runs out, let's dive deeper into the respond part, because responding how and responding in what way? And I know that's a very broad question, but to the person listening to this, they're like, oh man, I heard this amazing interview with Jim. I want to get my life back on track and do better. Well, what's the building blocks to having a great way to respond so that way you can be consistent and not have a burnout?
Yeah, look, it's a beautiful question. And I think a starting place for this is to try and ascertain, why is this communication happening that I'm in right now? What is the bigger purpose of this communication? Because there's different reasons why we communicate, and to communicate is to make common. It's a sharing, right? So this person right now might be communicating to me without words. They might be sitting next to me, and maybe they're sitting next to me and they're crying because they're upset about something that they're going through. So what is the purpose of this communication? How can I serve the communication? Maybe they don't want me to talk. Maybe words won't suffice here. Maybe they just want me to sit here and hold them. That's communication, right? Or maybe someone is upset and they're trying to explain to me why they're upset. So in words, they're saying to me, I'm upset because of A, B, and C. So as I'm listening and really trying to seek to understand how they're feeling, where they're coming from, then maybe the way to respond after they've finished speaking, rather than sharing my point of view, maybe the way to respond might be just to repeat back what I've heard, so they know I was listening. So if you'd just been saying to me, Shemaya, you've just been telling me how you feel, after you've finished, that I might say to you, hey, Shemaya, what I heard you say was, and then repeat back to you what you've said, and then ask you, did I hear you right? Am I getting you? Give them the opportunity to say, yeah, man, you get me. Right? This is conscious communication. Yeah, so it's contextual. It's dependent on the circumstance. Yeah. And sometimes they might be asking you, tell me, how do you feel? And so they're asking you to share where you're at. I find a really functional, and this is quite technical, but to your listeners, this is something that if you can create this as a practice when you're in communication, especially if the communication is getting heated, if it's getting emotional and you're getting defensive and you notice your heart rate's going up and your mouth might be getting a bit dry and you're starting to want to jump in and maybe even raise your voice, pause. If you can teach yourself to pause, take a breath, and then choose how to respond rather than being so reactionary. We're all very reactionary. So someone's saying something to you, you're getting upset because you really disagree with what they're saying, and maybe they're accusing you of something and you're feeling injustice and you're feeling upset. If you can just teach yourself before you respond, just to take a breath and pause, create that space and calm yourself down. I think we're going to have much more effective communication when we don't get railroaded by really strong emotions.
Yeah, I like what you said earlier about seek to understand, because many times when we can have a heated discussion, maybe it's a healthy discussion, but it's a necessary discussion where it involves more tense emotions, it's easy to have a person say something and we're just focused on trying to respond to that statement or what they just said. But are we really listening to what they're saying so we can understand before we actually respond? What do you think on that?
Yeah. Oh, look, absolutely. And it doesn't mean I'm always going to agree with you. That's not the point. The point is that before I come to my opinion, I'm going to seek to understand. I'm going to open my ears. I'm going to listen to you and try as much as I can to try and get where you're coming from.
Once again, true honor talking to the one and only Jim Fuller. You can go to his website, jimfuller.com. And like they say, time always goes by fast when you're having fun. So before we wrap up officially, how can someone listening right now get in touch with you and also learn more about your resources and your services?
Oh man, look, grab the book if you can. It's been a labor of love, and it was only published in November last year. It's on Amazon.com. And the feedback is starting to come in. I've got people who I don't know from around the world saying, thank you so much. You've saved my marriage, or you're changing the way I'm leading my team at work, or, I'm accessing a deeper relationship with myself. So I'm really happy that the book is doing good. You can grab that either off gemfuller.com or off Amazon. Grab the book, man. I really want people to read it.
And before we sign off, I just want to make one more point to the audience. Like today, if you learn something, listen more, and then respond after you listen. And that's the key. If you don't listen, it's almost like driving somewhere without knowing where you're going, no direction. You're just going, but you're not going effectively. So I want to say thank you, Jim, for taking time out of your schedule to kind of help navigate this topic. And I think you did such a great job breaking it down for us and allowing us your perspective, which is very important on the show.
Yeah, you're so welcome. Thanks for having me on, Shamar. And, thanks for doing the beautiful work that you're doing too.
Once again, you can find Jim on his website, and that website right now is jimfuller.com. Once again, that's jimfuller.com. Make sure you go support him, and make sure you go check out his book. And also, if you want to hear this episode, make sure you visit IamRefocusRadio.com. And like we say on every single show, man, thank you, Jim, for taking time in your busy schedule talking to us today.
You're welcome, brother.
I Am Refocus Radio is brought to you by Foo 4 Star and Holy Crab. Foo 4 Star is a family-owned Asian restaurant in San Antonio, Texas. We have been a local favorite for Asian cuisine for over 10 years. With nothing but full smiles and fast service, you'll be leaving satisfied. Come on in for some authentic Vietnamese food. Holy Crab is one-of-a-kind Cajun Creole-style seafood restaurant located in Universal City, Texas. We offer traditional seafood items as well as chicken and steak. We also offer seafood boils. Come give us a try. You won't be disappointed. You can find these two eateries in Universal City, Texas at 2921 Pat Booker Road.